Alright. Hello everybody and welcome to part 3. I was hoping to make this the last part, but after trying to combine the coloring part and the cleanup, the backgrounds and shading all into one video, it just got way too long. So we're just gonna get through the coloring in this part, and part 4 we'll finish it off with backgrounds and shading. So the coloring is pretty simple, mostly just dropping color in where it belongs. There are some things like Getz's cloak that have details that are added in this part because they just wouldn't look good with black outlines all to themselves. I really was not looking forward to doing the patterns on Getz's cloak, but after breaking it down, it really isn't that complicated. It's just a big eye on each side and long streamers or whatever. And I totally forgot N had black sleeves there, which is kind of dumb since he has them in the panel right under it. I didn't notice it until Llama Cutie pointed it out, so thank you for that. I get pretty tired when drawing these, so if you ever notice anything missing or something that's wrong, just please feel free to point it out, and depending on how embarrassing it is, I will definitely fix it. So basically when coloring, I go to the layer that has all the line art. I grab the magic wand tool, hotkey W, and select an area or several areas that need to be a certain color. Now if I filled the area with color right after selecting, it would leave a really ugly space between the selected area and the line art, which I obviously don't want. So in order to remedy this, I go up to the selection tab up top, go down to modify, and choose expand. And this makes it so that the area selected is just a little bit larger now. So rather than being within the black lines, is actually cutting into them just slightly. Then going to the layer, the color layer underneath, I can drop bucket the color I want with no problems at all. Of course, going through that menu every single time you make a selection so you can expand it, it gets pretty annoying after a while, which is why I made an action that does it in one click. Actions is just another palette that can be opened in the Windows tab, and it allows you to record a certain series of events that it then repeats every time you hit it. For example, after I hit record, I go to use the modify expand selection function, set it to expand a certain number of pixels, and then stop recording. After that, every time I hit the action button I created, it will go through the process of expanding it however many pixels I've decided automatically. I keep the actions palette open up at the top right of my screen. Other actions I have are crop, flatten image, and contract, which is the opposite of expand. I recently added an action for flipping the image horizontally. Because I see a lot of artists do that thing where they'll randomly flip their drawing and work on it like that. And since my own drawings tend to look horrible when flipped, I thought I ought to start doing that too. Under the actions, I have the layers palette, pretty standard. It gets a little annoying having to go back and forth selecting layers all the time, especially during the coloring stage when it's a line art layer, color layer, back and forth, back and forth. But I mean, I don't like the shortcuts for the layers, and so I don't think I'm ever going to get used to using them, which is okay. I mean, What's a little inconvenience, am I right? You've got to name your layers though, especially if you're like me and you use a whole ton of layers. You will lose things if you don't name them properly, and also having too many layers, that also slows down the computer. Um, so I'm working on trying to compress things more when I work in terms of not having too many layers. Layers can be an awesome tool, but it can also be kind of a crutch because you think just because it's on another layer, it's not. I can go back anytime. If I don't like something, I can just get rid of the layer because it's not touching anything that's important. And you just gotta have a point where you decide this is going to stay, or just kind of accept that there's going to be mistakes that you make, and sometimes they're not going to be on another layer that you can just get rid of, and you got to incorporate it into your drawing. Just like what we used to do before Photoshop and all these computer programs, you know? Back in the old days when we used to Back in the old days when we used to use pencils and we had to erase things when you made a mistake. So under the layers I have my swatches, which are simply the colors I use over and over again. This is where I keep them all, so I don't have to go back to old episodes to eyedropper the characters to get the exact colors. I can have them all there, always ready. This is a custom set I made specifically for my Nuzlocke. It has each of the characters' colors saved for easy access. Not much else to say there. I'm drawing in the patterns on Getz's cape now. Something I've been avoiding this whole time. I think the most annoying part of drawing Getz's is that weird castle buttress thing he wears around his neck. But anyways, I have my toolbars over on the right. Normally it is on the left side of the screen, but I moved it over to keep things more compact and more convenient for watching YouTube videos. Or I mean, using references while I draw. Since, I don't have a fancy double monitor set up. Normally the work window, the one that holds your canvas, shrinks and grows when you zoom in and out, but I don't like that. So I just turn that off in the preferences, keeping the the Windows size fixed until I move it myself. On top of the toolbar and next to the actions are the palettes I don't use often but are still useful and I like to have at hand. Starting from the top, I have my info palette, which tells you how big the canvas and resolution is, stuff like that. Under that is the animation palette, for obvious reasons. Next you have the brush and tool palettes, where you can select and change the brush presets, and then the text tool palettes, where you can modify the space between letters and stuff when working with text. And yes, I just drew in her backpack there because I had forgotten earlier. That's the kind of stuff that happens. But yeah, that's how I like to have my layout. Most often I'll have my windows set up like this, so I can watch YouTube videos while I draw. Having a second monitor would be nice, except considering I normally work sitting on the floor like this, I don't think it would make much sense to get that kind of setup. I want to wait until I at least have a place of my own. And I think that was the coloring done, so after coloring, I always go in close and do a cleanup. You saw how, for the most part, I stayed very zoomed out when laying down the base colors. So you never really realize how much you're missing with the magic wand tool until you really zoom in. I put a color down in the background so I can see where I missed any whites, usually in the eyes, which looks really freaky when I pick a color like red or something. It doesn't matter what color you use, but it's best to be a color that isn't used in the drawing. Um, like if I use the same color green as N's hair, I wouldn't be able to tell if part of his hair wasn't colored in. Um, I don't like using really intense colors either. I used to use magenta and red and stuff, but those colors hurt my eyes after a while. I also like to add the small details in this stage, like highlights in the eyes, on those rocks, stuff like that. But what I'm really going after are those spots which are too small for the magic wand to get into. Mostly the corners or places that weren't drawn properly, so the lines weren't closed and the selection wasn't contained well enough. Those parts I go in real small and just kind of fill them in with the brush. But it's easier doing this after the base colors have already been put down, because now all I have to do is eyedrop whatever colors are around it, and then just color in, rather than going to the swatches and selecting colors from there. You can probably tell I'm extremely lazy. Anything I can do to make it so that I don't have to do something, I'm there. So just doing some more detailed shading on his face here for dramatic effect and comedic effect, hopefully. As if he couldn't get any uglier, right? I actually don't paint much digitally. Digitally. Dude, why is that so hard to say? Digitally. I don't paint much digitally. I don't paint much on the computer. Um, I hardly ever paint with actual paints, just because it's so messy. But digital painting, that's like an entirely different medium that I've yet to master. I mean, I can fake it enough for stuff like that where it's basically just fancy shading, but I've never been able to get the brush and color control that some artists have, and makes me so jealous, and I just but I'm working on it. I'm still trying to find a painting style I'm comfortable with. I feel like as soon as I can learn how to apply color theory, I'll have half the battle won. That is one of my main failings as an artist, though, is I've never really developed a true sense of color. Like if I was doing a drawing from life, or like a still life drawing, I could pick out colors and like see them, but if I was just drawing on my own out of my own head, it's really hard for me to know what colors to use and what goes well together. And colors, man. How did I get on this tangent about painting and color theory? Well, this is the coloring stage, so I guess why wouldn't I be talking about color theory? Not that I was talking about color theory, I was just kind of thinking about it. Uh, so, I'm pretty much done with coloring now. I'll pick up directly from here for the last part. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day of doing whatever it is you do, and I'll see you all in part 4. Bye!